going on, guys? Welcome back to a very special episode of Motorsports Digest. We are here today with Mr. Stefan Johansson, world-renowned driver for Formula One, Le Mans, and a little bit of kart racing. So that's pretty exciting. It's glad to have you on the show.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
So we we have a very wide variety fan base. So we got like Formula One, WEC, IMSA, NASCAR. We do a lot of NASCAR and IndyCar.
Okay.
So just tell a little bit about yourself and what you used to do, because I mean, whenever people think of Stefan Johansson, they think of 1997 Daytona 24-hour winner and Formula One driver. So just get a little bit of insight about yourself and what you used to do.
Well, it's funny. In 90, the only one I didn't win was Daytona, unfortunately.
Oh, really?
I won Sebring and Le Mans that year, but I didn't do Daytona that year. But I've tried many times, but I never had any luck at Daytona. But what my background is, I started, you know, karting like everybody, young age, and dropped out of school when I was 15 to try to become a racing driver, basically, and moved to England when I was 18 and went through the whole process over there. Formula 3, won the F3 championship in 1980 for Ron Dennis before he became the owner of McLaren when it was Project 4. And then F2, then eventually made it back into Formula 1 in 83 with Spirit Honda, when Honda came back to Formula 1. And then I had a 10-year career in F1 with Ferrari, McLaren, a few other different teams. Then I made the leap to come over here to the US and do the Champ Car.
Yeah.
Or USAC. I can't remember. I can't even remember what it was called back then. Actually, was it USAC or IndyCar? It wasn't IndyCar, but anyway.
Yeah, we still got USAC around.
Yeah. So I did that for 5 years for Tony Bettenhausen, and got established here. You know, and I've been in the US ever since. I then ran my own team and did a lot of racing in sports cars, and then ran IndyCar for a year with my own team as well, and then. I was racing actually up until 3 years ago, but primarily just, I mean, the last 10 years at least, just for fun, you know, the odd race here and there, you know, and decided to finally call it a day about 3 years ago.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
you're still in partnership with Scott Dixon, and seems like you're still established with IndyCar a little bit. So just tell us a
Oh,
little bit
yeah.
about what you do with Scott Dixon.
Well, I've been working with Scott now for 22 years, I think it is. So he came to drive for us when I had my Indy Lights team, and we've had a relationship ever since. So I've been managing his career since pretty much the very beginning, really.
Yeah.
And you know, I mean, we're more like brothers, really, than you know, just a pure business relationship in that regard. And then I also look after Felix Rosenquist now, and a few other people that I have not sort of an official manager maybe, but I do help a couple other guys in IndyCar on bits and pieces, and a sporting director for Ferrari, the GT program here in the US. Uh, so I'm very heavily involved in the industry still, you know,
That's awesome.
but just not behind the wheel, you know, but everything else.
Right.
Yeah.
So you raced for Tony Bettenhausen. Would you give us a little bit of insight between those? Because you were with Tony for 4 years, I believe, four
Yeah.
or five.
Four,
Give us
five, really.
give us a little bit of insight racing with him and about the kart industry back then, because a lot of people don't know about kart and IRL and that whole thing. So just give us a little bit of insight on that.
Yeah, well, when I came over, kart was really booming. You know, it was. I mean, it was really strong because it was. You know, I came over, and then Nigel, of course, came over the following year, '93, and that lifted it massively because he was the current world champion when he came over. So of
Yeah.
course, that brought a huge amount of Formula One fans. Uh, you know, to what and the racing was, well, it wasn't was because I think the racing has always been fantastic in cards, champ car, Indy car, whatever name it's got. I mean, it's you know, it was like a breath of fresh air for me to come from Formula One, and you know, used to big teams with you know everything, you know, And I remember the first test I did with Tony, he rolls up in a pickup truck with a trailer behind it, and like two guys looking after the car, and it was completely different, but it was so pure and so fresh, that it was really,
Yeah.
I loved it actually, because it was just pure racing, it wasn't any of the politics and all the bullshit
Oh
you have
yeah.
to deal with, aside from the driving, so, and the tracks here then, but even now are just so much, I mean, they're just great tracks, because they're like old school, you put a wheel off, and you get punished immediately, so
Oh
you
yeah.
really, you're on the limit the whole time. And if you step over the limit, you're going to get punished. I mean, not necessarily, you don't want anyone to have an accident, but there should be some level of punishment for going over the limit, whether you do it because you're trying too hard or you're not concentrating, or God forbid something break on the car, of course, but that's really only three reasons you have an accident, so, and most of the time it's because you're either trying too hard or you're not concentrated, so that was great too, because it was really like you had to drive harder and more better, I would say, in many ways than I
Absolutely.
was used to.
Mhm.
I'm going to ask you a question, and this could be about any part in your career. What was the most memorable part of everything in your career?
Oh my God, I don't think I can pinpoint one thing, to be honest, but because there's so many, good memories, and it doesn't necessarily have to be related to anything great that happened, just things that happen in your life, but I mean, obviously meeting Enzo Ferrari and being hired at the same time, was obviously an incredible moment, because it all happened so quickly, and it was just like overnight, my whole life changed, literally over a period of about 3 days. It went from, struggling to establish myself in F1 and get a permanent drive. And then all of a sudden I'm in a Ferrari, and the whole life just changed literally overnight.
Could you give us some insight on how the first, what would you say, first impression of meeting Enzo Ferrari was like?
Oh, it was amazing. I mean, like everything with him, he was the master of the drama and the mystique and everything. I think whether it was on purpose or it was just how it was, I don't know to this day, but he certainly, it was, and I guess because there was, the whole saga around the team and him and everything over such a long period of time. But the first meeting was kind of in secret, so we met at the old factory in Modena, not in Maranello, where the current, where the team is now, but it was, and I don't think the factory had been used since probably, I would say, the 60s sometime. And it was just kind of not derelict, but it was, his old office was still there. And you walk through this corridor, it was like at 5 in the afternoon, something, so the sun was just going down, and, no lights were on. It was like a Fellini movie, you walk through this corridor and you see the photographs of Nuvolari, Sterling Moss, all my heroes, and it was like, wow.
That's
And
awesome.
then we go into this room, where he says, still no lights on. You can just see the silhouette of him in the back, just like, the big nose and like this, like, and it was, it was me and his son, Piero Ferrari, and Marco Piccinini, and yeah, it was very, just like, oh my God, this is like crazy,
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
I'm going to send it to Garrett, and he's got some
Yeah.
questions for you as well.
Yep.
What's something that you learned from the sport that's helped you in your career afterwards with the art that you do or anything outside of racing?
Well, I think the one thing you learn when you're at the sort of the sharp end of any sport or whatever you do. I mean, well, because when you're in the sharp end of sport, you learn how to discipline yourself in so many different ways, and I think that applies for everything you do in life, whatever you set out to do in life, it's pretty easy to get to 95%,
Yeah.
but that's still mediocre if you want to have a good career. So then the last five is just hard work.
Mhm.
and you just got to keep grinding and keep grinding, and just, I can be better here. And you got to be honest with yourself, obviously, and recognize where where you're weak, and try to improve that, and I guess that's the one thing I learned in racing, because I apply that to everything in life. You just try to be the best you can, whatever you set out to do, and you just constantly thinking of ways to improve. What can I do better here, or this and that, and connecting and with people, it's a full-time process, whatever you set out to do, I think.
Um, what was it like sitting 2 feet off the ground in a 200-mile-an-hour Indy car or Formula One or whatever? Like that, just how crazy is that?
Well, when you do it all the time, you don't think about it in those terms, because it's that impression or that sensation goes away pretty quickly. I mean, okay, of course, if you go from nothing to
Mhm.
that immediately, it's like mind blowing, it just be like something you can't even comprehend, how the forces and how far you can go with these cars in terms of how late you brake, cornering speeds, and just the impression in the car, because it's a pretty violent environment in these cars. You get thrown around, and if someone is not used to it, they'll probably pull every muscle in their body if you just throw them in at that speed immediately, because they don't understand, that what you have to do to kind of, just stay in that, in that shape, basically. So, but it's, you just kind of, it's a little by little process all the time. You start with karting, then you go to, Formula Ford maybe, and then Formula 3. So it's, it just gets a little bit more at each level you go up, let's say. But I mean, it is, I mean, it's gotten a lot better too, of course, in terms of the engineering of the cars is way better. The tracks are way better, especially in Formula One, because most of the tracks are like a dance floor now, but I mean, I remember back in the early days, I mean, when you ran so close to the ground before they had the, now they have the floor, you can't rub the plank more than so much, because then you get disqualified. But I mean, back then it was like, because every millimeter lower, as low as you can get, I mean, I remember sometimes you literally, you were so close to the ground that your ass was on fire, literally, because of the heat from underneath the car, So you kind of had to just balance that, but the lower you go, generally with aero, the quicker the car is, So I mean, we always say, like, if the guys didn't have to repair the floor after each session, the car just wasn't low enough, So you just always, that's the great thing with racing, and you
Mhm.
just, everything is taken to the limit all the time, you just push it absolutely as far as you can,
I think it's pretty obvious what your favorite car you ever rode in your career, but was there a specific car at Ferrari that you preferred over? Uh,
Well, I mean, as far as like favorite car, just to be a great car to drive, I don't think the Ferrari was really in the frame back then, because, unfortunately, I was kind of in an era like they have now, where the car wasn't it its best, in terms of the rest of the competition. I mean, 85 wasn't too bad. It dropped off, dramatically halfway through the season, but the 86 car was really, wasn't a great car, from the very beginning,
Mhm.
And I mean, the best car I think I ever drove in Formula One was, funny enough, a car I never got to race, which was the Tolman, the 85 Tolman, which was a fantastic car. It was designed by Rory Byrne, who then ended up at Ferrari when they were winning everything. And I think Rory, even to this day, is, I mean, probably the unsung hero of Formula One designers, because he's such a low key guy. He doesn't care about the limelight, but the guy's a genius, and he all his cars has always been fantastic to drive. So that's probably the best F1 car. But in terms of overall, I mean, the Audi R8 is obviously right up there, in sports cars.
Yeah.
The Cytec was an unbelievable car that never ever got any recognition either. I mean, the car was just phenomenal.
Yeah.
So those are probably up there, as a sort of the top three, maybe. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm gonna throw it back to Cameron since he's got some questions from some of our fans who were lucky enough to enter some questions to ask you.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. So this one comes from one of our fans. His name is Paul. He said, "I understand with your background in F1 why you probably went to kart versus IRL. However, with the IndyCar, what it is with IndyCar as what it is today, if the split were happening now, would your decision be different and why?"
Well, I didn't choose IndyCar RL because when I came over, um, it was just kart, or champ car or whatever. There was the split happened as I more or less stopped racing in IndyCar, so there was no choice to be made for me. But I mean, unfortunately, that split really killed IndyCar, and it's taken best part of 20 years to recover. I mean, I think it's gradually clawing its way back now, and I think with Roger Penske now in charge, I mean, that's going to make a big difference. I mean, it's, in my opinion, there is absolutely no better racing on this planet than IndyCar. I mean, it's just fantastic. Great team. All the teams are good now. Every single team is good now. All the drivers are high level, So I mean, it's so competitive. And I mean, you just look at last year, final race, Joseph and Scott, none of them could qualify in the top six, and they are the guys battling for the championship. I mean, tell me one other series that would happen in. I mean, it just doesn't happen, I mean, it's just so, you have one little glitch, and 10 places on the grid immediately. It's just, I love IndyCar. I mean, I'm a huge fan, and I think it's on the sporting side they have it absolutely nailed down. The cars are technical, but not stupid over the top technical. Incredibly hard to drive. I think every drive. I mean, I think Grosjean had a bit of an eye opener when he came over to test last week. He didn't realize that.
Yeah.
This is hard work. This is not an easy car to drive, especially not when you're used to an F1 car where you got 50 dials on the steering wheel just to dial the car in for you. Here it's just, heavy steering, no power steering, and you got to work hard to get speed out of it. Yeah.
We have another question we have a couple of questions from our fan Marty. He says, "During your racing career, you were affiliated with many prominent teams and teammates, from early on with Ron Dennis, stints with Shadow and Spirit, Terrell and Tolman, Ferrari, McLaren, Michelle. What are your fondest memories of a specific team owner, a specific teammate, and a car that stood out as favorite to have driven?"
Whoa, that's a tough one again, and I mean, uh, I've enjoyed pretty much every teammate I've had. I've never really had any big conflicts or anything. I think I've always had the approach. You you keep it honest and open. Don't try any, you know, shenanigans with hiding information and all that. And it always works out better because if you elevate the level if both drivers help each other, and may the best man win on the day, and that's always how it was. You race hard, but once you've kind of done the job, you can go out and have a good dinner together, and and just have a good laugh, and in that regard, Ron Dennis was actually fantastic. I mean, it's professional and super serious as everything was, but once we kind of closed the book, and left the track, then we had a lot of fun together as well. Great dinner and just laughing and joking and all sorts of shenanigans going on. That may not be for public. This, but Prost was great too in that regard. Because it was part of the same package there. But I've enjoyed all of them. I mean, obviously, had tremendous time with Enzo Ferrari. We used to have lunch every day. We tested at Fiorano, and it was great. I mean, just all the stories he was telling. And Piccinini had to do all the translation all the time. And he used to wind him up like crazy. Because Marco was very religious. He was a big part of the Vatican and all this, and Enzo used to wind him up. Tell all the stories when I was a young guy. With these adventures with all the girls in the area there, and Marco had to then translate, and he was like red as a beet, relay all these stories, and he only did it to wind them up, but it was good fun. Yeah.
Question number 2 from Marty: "Do you have any memories associated with driving for Ferrari and leading laps in front of Tifosi at San Marino, ultimately running out of fuel while leading the race?"
Yeah, of course. I mean, that's, I mean, probably the moment that I kind of have the most, say, not regret, because it wasn't something that I did, but had it gone the other way, I think the momentum would have shifted massively inside the team as well. I mean, the first win is always the hardest, and I would have won that race. I mean, had it not, what happened was that we had the game plan set, and the car was really fast all weekend. I was quickest on the Saturday morning practice before qualifying. And then in qualifying, the car was just undrivable. I mean, I couldn't understand, just inconsistent, no grip. And we discovered afterwards that the floor wasn't tightened up. So the whole floor was moving. So the aero was moving, center of pressure was like, 1 minute it was in the front, the next minute it was all over the place, so I only qualified 15th, but we knew that the car was quick, so we just put the game plan in place. This is the datum lap, because you have a reading on the dashboard of how much fuel you're using. And if you stay right on that number or lower, then you're fine, and I knew I was consistently just staying right on the number, but I was still catching the leaders, at a fairly good rate. So I knew that I was going to be okay, till the end of the race. And then it runs out of fuel with a lap to go. And we found out afterwards that there was a crack in the inlet manifold for the turbos, which was sucking in more air. And that in turn then obviously pushed more fuel in to compensate. So it had the right mixture. And that's why it ran out of fuel. I think I lost you guys. You're frozen here.
Yeah, I think we might have lost Cameron. He
Oh yeah.
yeah. Oh yeah, we did. Oh no.
Yeah. Did you hear that or?
Yeah. Oh yeah, I heard all.
Oh, you did. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So good. Yeah.
So you said that there was a crack in the turbo pulling in more.
Yeah. The inlet manifold, the plenum on the top of the, it had a small crack in it, and it was sucking in air. So of course the mixture is set at a certain, mixture.
Yeah.
So it was just pumping in more fuel so that it had the same mixture. And that's why it ran out of fuel with a lap to go.
Wow,
which was, but I mean, when I passed Elio for the lead, with whatever 4 laps to go, whatever it was, I couldn't hear the engine for the sound of the crowd, when it was unbelievable. I mean, I remember it to this day. It was incredible.
Wow.
Yeah, amazing feeling, of course,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh, there he is.
Oh, here we go.
Sorry about that. My computer crashed.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very unfortunate.
That's no good.
So, sorry about all that. I didn't get to hear about the end. So, but I'm sure you guys ran through everything.
I think we covered that one. Yeah.
I've got one more question from another fan. He said, "Talk, if you would, about the beast that was the Ferrari 333 that you took to victory in both 12 Hours of Sebring and the 24 Hours of Le Mans."
Well, I didn't win Le Mans in the 333. I won that in the Porsche with Jost. I won Sebring with the Ferrari that same year.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, the 333 was great car, beautiful car to drive. But especially, it was already kind of dumbed down a bit when I won Sebring. But I did the very first race with it at Daytona as well, which was probably, I would say maybe 3 or 4 years before then, which was the first race we did. It was me, Michele Alboreto, and Mauro Baldi. And the car was, they had no restrictors then. So it was the V12 with full, 12,000 RPM or whatever it had. It was incredible. And I mean, the car was so much faster than anything else out there. It was ridiculous. I think we had an 8-lap lead at midnight. I mean, it was but then what happened was that it got really, like Daytona sometimes gets really cold at night.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to switch the engine off at the pit stops. And it got more and more difficult to restart it every stint as it got colder. the starter motor, and it just wouldn't turn over. And in the end, we just could not get it started. So we had to retire the car.
Wow.
Yeah, which was a shame because I mean it was amazing. It was just, I mean, like crazy fast.
Hmm.
So, since you're not driving anymore, you're still heavily involved with motorsports. Give the fans a little insight about what you've been doing while you're retired from driving.
So, I mean, obviously, I'm, like I said before, I'm very involved in the business still, massively with my drivers and with the Ferrari guys. And, I do some work with McLaren as well sometimes. So I have quite a heavy engagement in the industry still. And I go to, I would say about half the races in IndyCar and IMSA, as well. But I've also, my whole life, I've always been interested in art, and I've been kind of as a hobby. Actually, I didn't start painting until Elio De Angelis and I was really, really good friends. We were like brothers, more or less. We're hanging out together all the time. And when he got killed, it was kind of a, tough time. And for whatever reason, I really don't know even today, but somehow I decided to go and buy a canvas and some paint and try to do something in his memory or whatever, and it was this awful, awful painting. It's like hidden in my mom's basement somewhere up in Sweden still. But that kind of got me hooked on it, and it was, to be honest, it's more like it was, well, it still is today, but more so then, like almost like a form of therapy, I guess, because it takes your mind off things, and it's like now it's really like, yeah, I'm glad I found it because it kind of puts you in the same state of mind as when you really focus on when you're driving, you get you just get into this bubble, and you're totally focused on what you're doing, so I do that now, and it's a wonderful thing, to have something that kind of give you the same state of mind as when you were racing, because it's tough for any top level athlete, I think, when you stop, because that life you've been living is so intense, and it's like occupies your mind 24/7, and then all of a sudden it's all gone. What do I do now? And it's like, it's great for a week to do nothing, but then like, you have that, you just want to, there's something, you got to get stuck into something, so but I treated it as a hobby for a long, long. It's only really the last 5 years I started to treat it more like something serious that I want to make a career of some sort out of, and I have a great studio in Santa Monica, and I produce quite a lot of work now, and we're selling a lot, just prints, and we're doing a lot of merchandise based around the art. So I have this series I call Memories of a Past Life, which is really inspired by all the races I did, in different tracks and different corners and stuff, these abstract paintings, that I name after, each painting is named after a corner of some of the Grand Prix circuit, and
Awesome.
and we're doing quite well with that. There's a lot of people that enjoy it, so, which is great.
I remember watching the Texas race, I believe last year, and Scott Dixon was wearing your face on it.
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
called my
exactly,
dad and
yeah,
said, "That's
yeah,
Stefan Johansson's artwork." I was like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
but
so we're doing a lot of merchandise now. We're adding more and more product all the time. I'm going to doing some cool bomber jackets. We're going to launch later on some sneakers and some luggage, and there'll be all sorts of t-shirts, and all kinds of stuff. Yeah, so
that's awesome.
it's fun. It's a creative process. Just again, I'm just sort of winging it most of the time, but it's fun to get in that. It's kind of the same as when you test a new car. You don't know what the hell's going to happen
For sure, yeah.
next, and, well, you do more now, but back in, like, I remember I always used to, when I was testing, because with Ferrari we were testing almost every day at Fiorano during the week, and Fiorano is, I mean, it's like a nice, it's like a good go-kart track, really. I mean, it's not, but we used to test aero stuff, which, I mean, it's almost impossible. But anyway, I remember Tomaini, my engineer, he always used to lay down when I had like a new rear wing or something that they clearly had no idea what was going to happen, So he always goes like, "Hey, pay attention the first 3 laps, okay?" Like, okay.
Did you ever have any pre-race rituals or anything you
Yeah,
do with the
yeah, a
car?
lot. I mean, I think every driver is super. I mean, every sportsman that I know is superstitious in one way or the other. Oh yeah, it was all kinds of weird stuff, like always tie the left shoe before the right, get in the car from the left side. I had my lucky undies for 10 years. There was just shreds left of them, and then we did the race at Macau one year at the end of, this is end of 88, I think. And went to after the race, we went to to the airport from the hotel with Paolo Barilla, uh, who so I got out of the taxi to pay the driver or whatever, and Paolo unloaded all the bags from the back. So then we stand there, and after we paid, Paolo, where's my bag? I, I must have forgot, and of course my lucky undies was in this bag, that just disappeared in the distance in this taxi. And it's like, that was it. My career was over, like it took me like 5 years to find a good replacement,
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I think. Go ahead, Garrett.
Going back to what you're doing now with your art and stuff, is there a certain piece that you've done that sticks with you and it's like your most favorite that you've done?
Well, not really. I mean, every piece means something to me, whether it's the abstract, but I also do these portraits, which is to have, it's more like if you can label it sort of fine art. They're very detailed, very more precise painting, if you like, that I then obscure with this text from whoever I'm painting, whoever the subject is. So I've done a few, I call that series Friends, Heroes, and Wankers. So it's a collection of whomever, and it's pretty obvious, art is subjective, but I think it's pretty clear who's who, so but I did one of Enzo, which has a pretty, what I would say, like his quote is very uncharacteristic. Is everybody, when you're famous, you get stereotyped as such and such a person because that's the way the media project you, but there's always a completely different person behind that persona. I find, everybody's just a normal human being with your daily problems, that whatever goes on in your life, it's no different for anyone. Everybody has shit to deal with every day, basically, and however that manifests itself, it's not always a wonderful life, even if you're rich and famous and successful and whatever, everybody's got stuff to deal with. But this particular quote from Enzo is like, it's very dark and kind of depressing. He talks about violence and how it demands your attention, and everything. And it's totally uncharacteristic and sort of completely away from the stereotype that you would imagine him being, and I like that, because it really makes a very strong statement, I think. Yeah.
Do you have anything, Garrett?
No, I as an artist myself, so I can
Oh, you do? Okay, cool. We have to compare notes sometime.
okay. Uh, yeah, as an artist, I completely agree with the once you start doing a piece, it's therapeutic, the
Oh,
world,
absolutely, 100%.
and it's just you and your art, and it's just
Yeah.
extremely.
No, it's a wonderful. I mean, I recommend it to anyone. And oh no, I can't even draw a stick figure. Well, then do stick figures, because that will then eventually turn into something. And that's the beauty of when you paint or when whatever art you do, whichever medium you work in, then that starts to trigger something else. And before you know it, you keep doing it. Then all of a sudden something develops, And I mean, it took me to do these portraits I do now. It took me 20 years, and then all of a sudden it just clicked.
Yeah.
That's great because no one's ever done that. It's kind of my style now, and it's unique, and it's different. And then all of a sudden, yeah, you're onto something, and it's great. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, cool. Well, I'd love to see your stuff sometime. I have to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's been doing a lot of our because we've been making our own like NASCAR winning banners and stuff. So that's pretty cool.
Oh, really? Oh,
Yeah,
nice.
I do more of the graphic arts, so I do a lot
Yeah.
of illustrations and stuff of drivers and such like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
We'll have to make one of you.
Yeah.
Yeah, seriously, I'd love to see what you're doing. That'd be great.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
have your email now, so I'll send you some of my art.
Yeah. Yeah, please do. That'd be great. Yeah.
So
Awesome.
we're gonna come down into the closing quarters of the interview. Stefan, one more question. Out
Yeah.
of all the tracks that you've driven in your whole entire career, which one is your favorite and which one do you hate the most?
Oh my. Um, well, I I mean, there are some, but it's interesting with the track because even like tracks that doesn't look particularly challenging or mundane, that every track to unlock it fully is a challenge, and it may be the most simple track, but there's like, all of a sudden, like sometimes in the middle of a race, you literally go 1 inch different lines and wow, like you find 210 somewhere, just so it's that challenge at every track you go to, just unlock every little secret on it, and it's tough, and but that's the beauty of it. It could be the simplest thing, or you just, there's a bump somewhere, so you don't go maybe on the perfect line, you just miss it a little bit or curb it a little bit more and this and that, but generally, as the sort of, if you would really pick tracks, obviously, I think one of the, maybe the best track in the world, in fact, is Macau. Macau is unbelievable. It's like Nürburgring on the streets, it's insane. And it's got that super long straight and then just this incredible flow rhythm, all the way. And you just dance from apex to apex, but you just got barriers everywhere. There's not one runoff area anywhere on the whole track except at the end of the long straight. So that's an amazing track, and it really takes a lot to go quick around there. But then you got, obviously, Nürburgring is incredible in its own way.
Oh yeah.
Crazy, but amazing, But as the one like real challenge, I would say that Indy qualifying probably beats all of it. I mean, it's mighty, when you're trimmed out to, I mean, you literally do that and it'll upset the car, in qualifying trip, because it's just so free and so light, and it's just awesome,
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, we are glad to have you on the show. We hope to stay in contact with you.
Yeah, sure. Anytime.
Is there anything else that you could add for our fans that who are watching and don't know about you?
I don't know. Good Lord. I don't know. I don't know. We'll have another chat. Maybe we'll find out some other secrets if we'll meet again.
Alrighty. Well,
Yeah.
thank you for being on the show, and thank you guys
Thank
for
you.
watching Motorsports Digest.